You're watching WSTV Digital Media.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the March 8, 2018 meeting of the City County Planning Board. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Today's meeting is being broadcast live by Winston-Salem TV Digital Media. It will be rebroadcast at 10 a.m. Friday morning, again at 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon. Our first order of business today is the consent agenda. These are items for which a petitioner is requesting withdrawal or continuance, or items which staff has recommended approval and no one has signed up to speak in opposition. For public hearings today, each side will have a total of 12 minutes. There is no rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed and the board goes into work session, no one will be permitted to speak unless a board member asks a question. For general use district zoning, the planning board must consider the full range of uses allowed in the zoning district being requested. Therefore, the petitioner may not refer to a specific use for the property. For special use district zoning, however, the petitioner must identify the intended use or uses and give specific details on how the site will be developed. Items under Section B of our agenda require final approval by either the City Council or County Commissioners. As such, votes taken today will go forward to those folks for their consideration. If you are addressing the board today, before you begin your comments, please give us your name, address, and zip code for the record. Before we get into the agenda, though, a couple comments. This is a very historic time for the planning board. It was 70 years ago last week that the City County Planning Board had its first meeting. In fact, our agenda book this month has a photo of that first meeting. It was at that time that the comprehensive plan was first adopted, also when the city adopted zoning ordinance. About 20 years later, 1967, is when the county zoning was established. Also in 1948, the first planning director was hired, a gentleman named Harry Moore. Mr. Norby now is the 6th planning director in the 70-year history. You probably saw in the paper yesterday that he's retiring August 1 after 19 years, which makes him the longest serving director in the history of our 70-year history. And before we do anything else, I just want to right now take this time on behalf of this board to really publicly thank Paul for the first time. And we'll have several other opportunities to do so over the next few months, but for what you have meant to this board and this community, and we really appreciate your service. So, thank you.
Thank you.
We got a difficult job to try to replace him. In fact, it's on our agenda. We're going to start that work later this afternoon. So, and Paul, I think you had an announcement you wanted to make also, I believe.
I do. It's kind of a sad announcement for us, but we're very happy for him. But I just wanted to, Walter Farabee, if you would stand up there. Just want to recognize Walter. Of course, he has been with us for several years and has been involved in a number of area plans, has been done some text amendments. He did a recent one on buffering, has done some special reports for us. But he has been named the new Director of Recruitment and Retention for the Winston-Salem Chamber of Commerce. So he'll be starting on that job soon, and we just want to congratulate him, but we are very sorry to see him go from our staff. So.
First item of business is approval of the minutes of the February 8, 19, and 22 meetings. Any additions, corrections to those minutes? If not, anyone care to make a motion?
Second.
Motion, Mr. Grubb, second by Mr. Leak. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now calling Arian King to present our consent agenda.
All right. First item is item B1. It's zoning docket W3357, and this was a request for RS9S zoning for an accessory dwelling unit located on the north side of Old Town Road. The applicant has requested this item be withdrawn, and their request for withdrawal was received by the automatic deadline. So this item is automatically withdrawn, and no vote is needed. Next item is item B2, zoning docket W3358, and this is a request for an MUS rezoning in the Brookberry Farm development on Meadowlark Road. The applicant has requested a 1-month continuance on this item. They got their request in by the automatic deadline, so this is automatically continued to your April meeting. Next item is item B3, zoning docket W3360, and this is a request to rezone about 1.2 acres from limited office special use zoning to limited office special use zoning, and you can see the site in yellow there at the southeast corner of Renolda Road and Locke Drive. It's currently undeveloped. This site was originally approved by City Council for LOS zoning for the use of banking and financial institution. That never panned out, and it was never developed as such. The request that's before you today is to add the use of offices, and what you see on the site plan there is almost a 9,000 square foot, 1-story office building. It's pulled up to the corner of Renolda and Locke Drive, and staff applauds the petitioner for good building placement there, good building design. It does have 2 access points off of Locke Drive, street yard along Locke Drive to screen the parking. Parking is to the side and to the rear of the building. Type 3 buffer yard along the southern edge and along the eastern edge. And the developer has worked with us. There's a there's some elevation conditions, or appearance conditions rather. We worked with the applicant to move the sign a little further north to get it out of the neighborhood, to provide a better location for the dumpster so it's not as visible for the neighborhood. And they also, I think, responded to some concerns about headlights shining into the house across Locke Drive, so they've altered this to a one-way circulation. So I think all of those things improve the plan, and we applaud the petitioner for being willing to go above and beyond to work on this. The area plan does recommend office or low-intensity commercial, so staff feels this is consistent with the area plan recommendation, and the applicant has had their neighborhood outreach with the neighborhood. So based on that, staff does recommend approval of this LOS rezoning.
Okay. No one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval. Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Bryan. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next item is B4, zoning docket W3361, and this is a request to rezone 0.05 of an acre from general industrial to highway business, and you can see the small sliver of property in yellow on your location map there. This is located west of Old Lexington Road, south of Sprague Street, and east of 52. There's a existing convenience store located here to the north. In order to redevelop that site, I think there was an effort made to purchase this property and then to get it zoned appropriately to add the HB zoning to go with that. So again, this is a very small sliver of property. The area plan does recommend commercial, and staff feels that HB zoning is appropriate here, and we would recommend approval of this request.
Anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing none, declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval. Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Leak. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next item is B5. It's zoning docket W2744, and this is a final development plan request for a warehouse in an LIS, limited industrial special use zoning, 2-phase site. And you can see the overall site in yellow on your location map there. It's on the northwest side of Temple School Road. You may remember we previously saw a request for a final development plan for a 140,000 square foot office in this lower portion. The portion we're looking at today is further north of that. And this is kind of just an overall schematic that sort of shows that. So if you can follow the cursor there, that's Temple School Road. The building that the board previously granted final development plan approval to is shown here to the south. Again, that was a 140,000 square foot warehouse. And what's up for consideration today is a 200,000 square foot warehouse with a potential 100,000 square foot expansion off the east side. And that's located in this area denoted by that red circle. This is a site plan that's been submitted with this request. So to get you oriented, Temple School Road is over here in the bottom right portion of the screen, a new public street, Millennium Drive, would be constructed to serve not only the 140,000 square foot building, but also this site as well. Again, a 200,000 square foot warehouse located basically in the middle of the site with a potential area for expansion off the side or the east side of the building. 2 access points, one to take you into the parking area, and then one for the loading and circulation around the north and back around to the south. Again, this area was already zoned LIS 2-phase, so the zoning is in place, that's already approved. The use is in place, that's already approved. So really what's up for consideration today is the site plan and the design and making sure it meets the first phase conditions along with minimum UDO requirements. Our staff has reviewed this. We feel like it meets first phase conditions and minimum UDO requirements, and we recommend approval of this request.
Okay. Yeah, no one has signed up. Anyone here opposed to this recommendation?
Not opposed. I just have a question. Have they said what they're going to do more north? What they're thinking to develop that?
Maybe repeat the question for the.
Yeah, so the question is to further north. I assume we're talking about further north of the proposed building, is that correct?
Southwest corridor, I think it is.
I'm sorry. If you'd like to come up here, I'll put my map up here, and if you want to point to it, then we can maybe.
Southeast 40, that's what it's called. I'm just wondering if the building is going to be up here, then what's going up? Is there anything planned for that?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant's here. If you'd like to hear from the applicant, they may be able to answer that question.
Someone care to answer the question?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Bob Leake. My address is 1080 West 4th Street, Winston-Salem, 27101. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. I'll try to answer the lady's question. This is a 99-acre industrial site zoned about 13, 14 years ago for the purpose of light industrial, kind of to mirror the 2 facilities that are further to the east of this property. At this point in time, there's nothing specific planned for the northern portion of this site. However, the long-term plan is to certainly develop this site out to the extent allowed, which would be about 70% impervious coverage. The building that is being discussed today is on about 20 acres, I believe, in addition to the first building that you looked at a few months ago, which is on 11 acres. So that'll leave a balance of around 60, 65 acres yet to be developed. There are plenty of buffers between that stream that have to be maintained. Areas off of that stream down here, there'll be a stormwater pond down there that will further push the development away from that neighborhood. So the answer is yes. At some point in the future, we'll be back asking for consideration on a site plan for additional development. But at this point in time, there is no one in line to take that particular space.
I had a question,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Lee. We were shown a slide that showed the overall plan. Mr. King showed it, and it had an extension of the roadway. Those broken lines up towards the creek.
Uh-huh.
I was just wondering if there was any plan to extend the road and connect into that neighborhood,
No.
or not to go across the creek.
No, ma'am. There are no plans at all. It'll be
I
a
think that's the kind of
self-contained
what she
park.
was concerned about.
Yes, ma'am. No, there are no plans at all for that. That will not be requested. That park is set up to be a self-contained light industrial park, and that's how it's going to be developed.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And let me just add that was the idea behind the original rezoning that occurred, I believe, back in 2003. What the zoning category was LIS 2-phase. So what 2-phase means is there isn't a concrete site plan that is submitted at the time of rezoning, which in this case was 2003, but the uses were approved. The conditions were approved that Aaron King referred to, the first phase conditions. And so what happens is when subsequent portions of the part that got rezoned 2-phase come in, then each of those is looked at individually for the site plan and compared to the conditions that got attached. But in terms of the uses, that all got decided with the rezoning that happened in 2003.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hearing no opposition, then I will declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs.
Question. What was the lady's name?
She didn't give.
Deborah LaFleur? Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, next item is item C1. It's subdivision 2018-007, and this is for a 5-lot, single-family subdivision in RS9 zoning. You can see the site there in yellow. It's about a little over 2 acres at the end of Hummingbird Drive. To get you oriented, I-40 is to the south here. Robbins Road is over on the left-hand side of this image, and Sedge Garden Recreation Center is the IP zoning that you see here to the southwest. This image is oriented a little differently than the one previously. So Hummingbird Drive, the existing pavement comes in from the bottom of the screen here, and what the developer would be doing is building a new cul-de-sac and then lotting off around it with 5 new single-family lots. Again, this is RS9 zoning. It's not a planned residential development. All of those lots are at least 9,000 square foot in size and at least 65 foot in minimum width, so they meet UDO requirements. Staff has reviewed this. It meets UDO requirements, and we would recommend approval of the subdivision request.
Move approval.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Bryan. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just had a question about the easement for the drainage. I hadn't seen that before, and I was wondering about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to see on this image, but the pipe comes under the road along in this area, and it discharges at this point. The 20-foot drainage easement runs along that property line to the edge, and there's also a drainage easement that straddles that property line between lots 1 and 2 right there. Not uncommon to see that. It was, I think, requested by our stormwater folks to capture that stormwater where it's being channeled to a point.
So they probably won't need a stormwater pond.
No.
Okay.
No, the level of disturbance and impervious here does not rise to that level. Right.
Any other questions? Have a motion for approval. Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next item is item D1. This is PBR 08-10. This is for a public school and IP zoning. This is Parkland High School over on Peters Creek Parkway. You can see the site there in yellow. And this is the site plan that's been submitted for this request. Really what's going on here is improvements to the circulation. So reworking this westernmost entrance, excuse me, and really cordoning off the bus drop-off from the parent drop-off. So this westernmost entrance would serve for the bus lot. It's physically separated from the rest of the parking lot where the parents would drop off and where the parking lot is. So again, this western portion is for bus drop-off. That's being reworked. And then for the parent drop-off, it would be the eastern driveway where you would come in, circulate, drop your child off, circulate back out this way, and then back out to Brewer Road. But again, that's the extent of the changes here. They're, again, to improve circulation on site. Staff has reviewed this. It does meet minimum UDO requirements, and we would recommend approval of this PBR request.
Move approval.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion?
Did you get all the comments and recommended conditions answered?
Yes, they were all addressed. I will say there was one item that Winston-Salem DOT did recommend sidewalk on Brewer Road that was not shown on the plans that came back in, and I believe there were some budgetary constraints that prevented the school system from showing that sidewalk, but everything else was addressed.
Any other question, comments? Motion for approval. Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next item is D2. It's PBR 9644, and this is another school. This is Meadowlark Elementary and Meadowlark Middle. Over on Meadowlark Drive, you can see the site there in yellow. The school system has asked that this item be withdrawn from consideration. They got their request in by the automatic deadline, so no need to vote on this. This item is automatically withdrawn. The last item is item D3. It's PBR 96-35. And this is our last school that we're looking at in IP zoning. This is Old Town at the intersection of Renolda and Chatillon. You see the site there in yellow. And the portion that we're looking at today is on the southern edge of the site at Talcott Avenue in this area here where those pod units are shown. What's being proposed is removal of those pod units and the installation of a new parking lot to take place in that area. So you can see the outline of the parking lot there, one new access point off of Talcott, and a street yard to be installed to screen that parking from the public street. In addition to this, there would be a small amount of widening that would take place at Talcott, and I believe that's Sunny Drive that comes up on the eastern portion of the site. A small amount of widening would be done there in accord. Based on the additional traffic that will be generated through here. So staff's reviewed this. It does meet UDO requirements, and we would recommend approval of this request.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion?
Yeah, I had some questions about this. I was wondering what kind of a parking lot this was. Was this for the staff parking?
I'll probably want to bring somebody up from the school system to talk about the operational portion of that.
Good afternoon. Nick Stebun with the school system. The parking lot that we're talking about here today is actually designated for a pre-kindergarten class situation where we're going to be revitalize an existing annex building, and this will be a parking lot to serve those parents picking up and dropping off and staff for that pre-K.
Okay, my question really had to do with, I know Talcott is a very narrow road. Mm-hmm. It's going to be widened. Mm-hmm. Will traffic be blocking the folks, because that is a dead-end street? Now, I'm just wondering about the people who live on the, the side on the other side where the driveway is, that they're not blocked from getting into their homes by backed up cars.
Right. And we sized the parking lot in a way to accommodate the current set way, I guess, of how parents are dropping off children at the pre-Ks. So it should accommodate all the parents dropping off and the timeliness of when they drop off, so that they are not blocking drive access on Talcott.
Okay, great, thanks.
All right.
Any other questions? Motion of approval.
Yes, Mr. King. Yes. Is this the case where you sent us the comments and conditions separately?
Yes. So, in my email I explained we're trying to transition from paper review to electronic plan review. And so we've been trying to find some of our frequent flyer customers to work with us on kind of a test basis. And so the school system was nice enough to, and MLA was nice enough to submit one of these so we could try it out. And so when we were putting the book together, the comment sheet was in there, and we didn't catch that it was blank. So that what I sent you were the comments that we received for this case. So
in the future, will you integrate the comments into the existing format or in that new format?
It will probably be a new format. It will probably look more like what you received via email than what's in your book, because the system we use generates the comment sheet already. So there may be a period where you see some cases that look like the old format and some that look like the new, but eventually they will probably all look like the new format.
I'm having a hard time on the top of my head remembering all of those. I remember there were some issues about a ditch and things like that. Were all of those conditions discussed with the school system?
Yes, they've worked those out on the revised plan they've submitted.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? A motion for approval. Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. And we're down to staff report. Mr. Norby?
Okay. Well, first thing I want to tell you about is that the City Council this past Monday night made appointments to the Planning Board, and they voted on the reappointment of Melinda to the Planning Board for another 4-year term, and they also brought forward a appointment for a replacement for Alan Younger, who, of course, is no longer eligible to be on the Planning Board. And that person is Johnny Seegers, who is a Project Diversity and Development Manager with the Samet Corporation. And he has a Bachelor of Science in Architectural Engineering. He is on the board of directors of Goodwill Industries. He's also has been associated with the U.S. Green Building Council. I just talked to him today, and his appointment has to be confirmed by and as well as Melinda's has to be confirmed by the county commissioners. That will be on their agenda for next Thursday. So presumably after that, they will both be appointed, and we've already, anticipating that, have arranged to give Mr. Seegers his orientation and get sworn in so that he could potentially be seated with you at your work session coming up for 2 weeks. So I just wanted to let you know about that. We have had the deadline for the preliminary submittal of new cases with site plans. That would be special use district zoning or final development plans. So looks like we're going to have 3 new special use district rezonings. We're going to have 1 site plan revision. We'll have the Meadowlark rezoning for the elderly care that was continued from this agenda. That'll be on there. And there may be 2 or 3 additional special use limited cases that will be submitted by Monday. Don't know anything about general use cases. So looks like you'll have a little more full agenda coming up for next time. Third thing I want to call your attention to is I think you got this in your mailing of the packets, but we've been sending you, Greensboro is redoing their comprehensive plan. And so they've been, as part of their process, they've been having a speaker series. And the last one I think I sent you a notice on was a talk about what's called the missing middle. So that's looking out for what the market is looking for in terms of multifamily housing, particularly smaller scale kinds of things and all that. So that talk was held a couple months ago. They're having a new one with coming up on March 13th with Cole Peterson, the author of Backdoor Revolution, and that is talking about accessory dwelling units and the role that they play in cities. So obviously we've already dealt with accessory dwellings, but if anyone's interested, that is happening next on March 13th at 6:30 at the Greensboro History Museum. And that would be it for the staff report. So after you take a brief break, you would be reconvening in the conference room right around the hall there and meeting with our Steve Strauss, the consultant who's going to be working with you on the recruitment and selection process for my replacement. So,
okay. Thank you. Any board members, anything here for the good of the order? Then we will move down there and we'll adjourn the meeting after we finish in there. So we'll take a 5-10 minute break and find our way down the hallway. Okay.